Welcome to Shawn Thinking Out Loud. I'm Shawn Armstrong, and today's episode is called Citizenship Without a Country. We're going to talk about something America has managed to make both complicated and stupid at the same time. Citizenship. More specifically, we're going to talk about what citizenship means, what it should mean, who qualifies for it, what responsibilities come with it, and why so many people now treat it like nothing more than a government-issued membership card. You were born here. You filled out a form. You passed through a checkpoint. You received a number. Congratulations. Apparently, you're now part of a nation. No loyalty required. No civic knowledge required. No respect for the law required. No common language required. No understanding of the Constitution required. No obligation to the people already living here required. Just paperwork. That's the modern view. Citizenship has been reduced to an administrative status. It's something the government records in a database, not something a person carries as a duty. And once citizenship becomes nothing more than paperwork, the country itself becomes nothing more than real estate. A collection of highways, tax offices, benefit programs, shopping centers, airports, military bases, and angry people arguing online about whether the nation is even allowed to have a border. A country isn't merely land. A country is people, laws, customs, institutions, memory, sacrifice, and expectations. It has a past, it has a political structure, it has a legal framework, it has borders. It has citizens, and those words have to mean something. If everybody belongs automatically, without obligation or distinction, then belonging means nothing. If citizenship demands nothing from the citizen, then citizenship becomes a prize without a purpose. It becomes a collection of benefits distributed by government that has lost the courage to ask what anyone owes in return. That's where we are now. People speak about citizenship almost entirely in terms of rights. The right to enter. The right to stay. The right to vote. The right to receive benefits. The right to challenge the government. The right to retain every cultural practice, every language, every allegiance, every grievance, and every political identity carried from somewhere else. But the moment you mention responsibility, the room gets quiet. Or worse, someone calls you a fascist, because that's where political discussion is now. Ask somebody to obey immigration law, and suddenly you're Mussolini with a customs form. Ask people to learn the common language, and you're committing violence against vowels. Ask citizens to know something about the Constitution, and apparently you're imposing an unfair academic burden on people who can spend 6 hours learning a dance for social media. Standards are oppressive. Expectations are hateful. Enforcement is cruelty. Borders are imaginary. Except when somebody crosses the wrong neighborhood boundary, attends the wrong political event, or stands in a space reserved for an approved victim category. Then boundaries become sacred again. Amazing how quickly people rediscover borders when they own property. Today, we're going to deal with 5 specific issues. First, birthright citizenship and the 14th Amendment. I support the constitutional language as it is currently written. I also believe the amendment should be reconsidered and updated through the constitutional process. Those two positions don't contradict each other. You can respect what the Constitution says and still argue that it should be amended. That's why the amendment process exists. The Constitution isn't a napkin. You don't scribble a new interpretation on it because the current wording became inconvenient. Second, we're going to separate legal immigration from illegal entry, because the claim that enforcing immigration laws means opposing immigrants is one of the laziest arguments in American politics. It's intellectually dishonest. It erases millions of legal immigrants who followed the law. It treats legal immigrants like fools for doing the paperwork while other people walked around the process. Third, we're going to talk about rights without responsibilities. The modern demand that citizenship, residency, benefits, and political influence should come without assimilation, loyalty, civic knowledge, or respect for law. Fourth, I'm going to talk about what living abroad taught me about nations. I live in Brazil. I came here legally. I obtained legal residency. Brazil expected me to follow Brazilian law. I didn't collapse onto the floor in emotional distress. I didn't accuse the immigration authorities of fascism. I didn't demand that Brazil rewrite its institutions around me. I handled the paperwork, a terrifying concept. I adapted. And fifth, we're going to define what American citizenship should mean. Lawful entry, constitutional loyalty, equal protection, civic participation, a common public language, personal responsibility, respect for the country's history without pretending that history is perfect, because no country has a perfect history. Countries are built by human beings. That means every national history contains courage, stupidity, sacrifice, corruption, greatness, bloodshed, achievement, hypocrisy, and people who should never have been placed in charge of anything more complicated than a sandwich. America is no exception. But a flawed country can still be a country worth defending. A flawed system can still be superior to the alternatives. A nation can correct itself without abolishing itself. And citizenship can include criticism without becoming contempt. Citizenship should mean that you belong to the country. It shouldn't mean that the country belongs to you. That distinction matters. Citizenship isn't an entitlement to reshape the nation around every personal preference. It's an agreement to participate in a constitutional order with millions of other people who possess the same rights. Equal rights, equal protection, equal responsibility under the law. That means citizenship can't become a permanent competition between racial groups, immigrant groups, religious groups, sexual groups, economic groups, and whatever new category activists invent after lunch. A nation divided into competing identity blocks eventually stops functioning as a nation. It becomes a bargaining table where every faction demands benefits and nobody accepts sacrifice. That arrangement doesn't last. History isn't subtle about this. A country can't survive indefinitely when citizenship becomes transactional. You give me benefits, I give you votes. You excuse my illegal conduct, I support your political party. You import my labor, I ignore your national decline. You tell me I'm oppressed, I repeat your slogans. That isn't citizenship. That's a political protection racket with better stationery. So today we're going to strip away the slogans. We're going to look at the Constitution. We're going to look at the difference between legal and illegal conduct. We're going to discuss assimilation without apologizing for it. We're going to talk about borders like adults. And we're going to define citizenship as something more serious than a document in a filing cabinet. Because a nation that can't define citizenship can't defend citizenship. And a nation that can't defend citizenship will eventually lose the meaning of citizenship altogether. America didn't begin as the world's policeman. It began as a young republic trying to protect its territory, its sovereignty, and its interests. The evolution of American foreign policy traces the long path from isolationism to global engagement, showing how war, commerce, diplomacy, ideology, and national security changed the way America deals with the world. The book started where the country started, with sovereignty, territorial security, and the hard question of how a republic survives in a dangerous world. It covers the founders' views on non-interference, the importance of commerce, and the role of national honor in shaping public opinion and diplomatic decisions. Because apparently countries don't get to live in a peaceful seminar room. Terrible inconvenience. This is where the scope opens up. The book follows the Monroe Doctrine, the Spanish-American War, World War I, Wilson's diplomacy, Versailles, World War II, and the Cold War. It covers containment, nuclear competition, Korea, Vietnam, and the long argument over when America should act, when it should restrain itself, and what happens when leaders get the balance wrong. The modern chapters move through Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Obama, Trump, and Biden. The book examines how each era adjusted America's posture toward the world, including terrorism, diplomacy, military engagement, and global conflicts. The argument keeps returning to one hard question: should America lead, restrain itself, intervene, or stay out? As usual, history gives no easy answers because that would be too considerate. If you want the long view of American foreign policy without slogging through a dozen separate textbooks, this is the book. Scan the QR code on the screen to go straight to the Amazon listing. The Evolution of American Foreign Policy, from Isolationism to Global Engagement, is available now, and it gives you the full arc from the founding era to the modern debate over intervention and restraint. The first sentence of the 14th Amendment's Citizenship Clause says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. That's the language. It doesn't say citizens only if their parents are citizens. It doesn't say citizens only if their parents are lawful permanent residents. It doesn't say citizens only if their parents filed the correct immigration paperwork. It says born or naturalized in the United States and subject to its jurisdiction. That language has been broadly understood to grant citizenship to people born on American soil, with narrow exceptions such as children of foreign diplomats who aren't fully subject to the ordinary American jurisdiction. Now, people can dislike that result. They can believe the amendment has been interpreted too broadly. They can argue that the historical conditions surrounding the 14th Amendment differ from modern mass migration. They can argue that the country never intended birth tourism, organized exploitation of citizenship rules, or large-scale illegal immigration to become permanent features of the system. Those arguments deserve discussion, but there's a correct way to handle them. You amend the Constitution. You don't pretend the words disappeared. You don't demand that judges invent language that Congress and the states never ratified. You don't treat the Constitution like a restaurant menu where you order the clauses you enjoy and send the rest back to the kitchen. I've said it before that I agree with the reading of the 14th Amendment as written. That doesn't mean I believe the amendment should remain unchanged forever. It means I respect the constitutional structure. There's an enormous difference between interpretation and amendment. Interpretation asks, what does the existing language mean? Amendment asks, should the language be changed? Those are separate questions. And American politics has become terrible at separating them. People begin with the outcome they want. Then they reverse engineer a constitutional argument to reach it. They don't ask what the text says. They ask how the text can be bent. If bending fails, they accuse the court of corruption. If the court agrees with them, they declare the decision sacred. If the court disagrees, democracy is ending by midnight. That happens on both sides. Conservatives can be just as guilty when they treat the Constitution as an obstacle to a policy they want. That's not constitutional government. That's political convenience wearing a powdered wig. The 14th Amendment emerged from a specific historical crisis. The country fought a civil war. Slavery had been abolished. Former slaves needed recognized citizenship and legal protection against states that were determined to deny both. Citizenship couldn't remain a vague privilege controlled by hostile state governments. The amendment established national citizenship and equal protection as constitutional principles. That's a serious achievement, and people who discuss the amendment should start there. The Citizenship Clause wasn't drafted as a tourist program. It wasn't designed as an immigration loophole. It wasn't written so foreign nationals could strategically cross the border, give birth, and create a future immigration benefit. It was written to resolve citizenship in the aftermath of slavery and war. But constitutional language often applies beyond the immediate crisis that produced it. That's part of constitutional government. A rule written in one era continues to govern later eras until it's lawfully changed. You don't get to erase it because history moved. You change it. That requires a political argument. It requires congressional action. It requires state ratification. It requires convincing people, which is precisely why politicians prefer judicial tricks and executive orders. Amending the Constitution is difficult. It demands actual consensus. Politicians hate actual consensus because it forces them to do more than perform outrage into a camera. So let's discuss the argument for updating the 14th Amendment. The United States of the 1860s did not have the immigration system, transportation system, welfare state, global mobility, or population movement that exists today. A person can now travel across continents in hours. International networks can advertise birth tourism. People can enter illegally and remain for years while immigration cases move through an overloaded system. Citizenship can create future legal claims involving family sponsorship and residency. None of that means children should be punished for the conduct of their parents. That's an important principle. A child doesn't choose where to be born. A child doesn't select the immigration status of the parents. A child should never become the target of political hatred. But a constitutional system must still decide what citizenship means and how citizenship is acquired. Compassion doesn't eliminate the need for a rule. And compassion can't become an excuse for avoiding every difficult legal decision. If the American people believe citizenship should require more than physical birth inside the territory, they should debate a constitutional amendment defining the standard. That amendment could require that at least one parent be a citizen, a lawful permanent resident, or a person legally present under a defined status. The exact language would need careful drafting, because vague laws produce bad enforcement. Bad enforcement produces litigation. Litigation produces years of political theater, and political theater produces cable news experts who somehow become constitutional authorities after reading 3 paragraphs and adjusting their glasses. Any amendment would also need to address military families, Americans living abroad, adopted children, refugees, asylum cases, residents of territories, and unusual jurisdictional questions. This is why constitutional drafting is hard. A slogan fits on a sign. A law must survive contact with reality. End birthright citizenship is a slogan. All right, what happens next? What exact rule replaces it? What happens when a child is born to one citizen parent and one undocumented parent? What happens when the parent's national government refuses to recognize the child? What happens when the child would otherwise be stateless? What happens when legal status is pending? What happens when an application was filed properly but delayed by the government? What happens when records are destroyed? What happens when the parents came from a failed state? Those questions aren't reasons to avoid reform. They're reasons to reform carefully. If you want constitutional change, write constitutional language. Don't throw slogans at constitutional problems. There's another issue people avoid. Citizenship rules influence behavior. Law always influences behavior. Tax law influences economic decisions. Criminal law influences risk. Property law influences investment. Immigration law influences movement. If birth inside the United States guarantees citizenship regardless of the parent's legal status, some people will plan around that rule. Pretending otherwise is childish. It doesn't mean every undocumented mother entered the country for that reason. It doesn't mean every family is manipulating the system. It means some people respond to incentives because human beings are human beings. We plan, we adapt, we exploit, we cooperate, we cheat, we follow rules, we break rules, we hire lawyers. Then the lawyers explain that the rules were unclear, which is lawyer language for the invoice is going to be impressive. A serious country studies incentives without demonizing people. It can say, we understand why people seek better lives. We also have the right to determine the conditions of citizenship. Those statements can coexist. Americans have been trained to believe every firm legal standard is an act of cruelty. It isn't. A standard can be humane. A border can be enforced without brutality. A citizenship rule can protect children while discouraging exploitation. A constitutional amendment can recognize historical purpose while responding to modern conditions. The real problem is that neither political party wants a durable solution. One side benefits from endless outrage about illegal immigration. The other side benefits from accusing every enforcement effort of racism. A solution would remove the fundraising issue. It would force politicians to discuss staffing, courts, documentation, legal entry quotas, asylum standards, detention capacity, visa enforcement, workplace verification, and constitutional language. That sounds like work. So instead, we get speeches. One side says invasion, the other side says compassion, then both return to offices protected by security checkpoints. Here's my position. The 14th Amendment should be followed as written until it is lawfully changed. The broad birthright citizenship interpretation shouldn't be overturned through creative political word games. The amendment process should be used to debate whether automatic citizenship should require at least one parent with lawful and meaningful ties to the country. That debate should protect children from statelessness. It should respect equal protection. It should avoid retroactive punishment. It should clearly define jurisdiction and residency. And it should be decided through the constitutional process. That's what constitutional government looks like. It isn't always fast. It isn't emotionally satisfying. It doesn't produce the immediate victory people demand. But the alternative is government by improvisation. And government by improvisation eventually becomes government by whoever holds power. You may enjoy that system when your side controls it. You won't enjoy it when your opponents inherit the machinery. The Constitution must remain stronger than the politician currently reading it. Birthright citizenship isn't a simple issue. Anybody telling you it can be resolved in a sentence is selling you something. Probably a campaign donation request. The amendment has a historical purpose. The language has legal meaning. The modern system creates real incentives and real problems. The proper response is neither blind acceptance nor lawless cancellation. The proper response is constitutional debate followed by constitutional action. That's slower than a social media post, but running a country is supposed to require more thought than posting a meme from the toilet. Let's move to the second issue, legal immigration versus illegal entry. This shouldn't be difficult. Legal conduct and illegal conduct are different. That statement shouldn't require a podcast segment. It should require about 6 seconds and a functioning nervous system. But American politics has managed to blur the difference so completely that enforcing immigration law is now described as hostility towards immigrants. That's dishonest. An immigrant is a person who moves from one country to another. That person may move legally, that person may move illegally. The word immigrant doesn't erase the legal distinction. If I buy a car, I'm a car owner. If I steal a car, I'm also in possession of a car. The method matters. Try explaining to the police that ownership categories are divisive and the vehicle simply migrated into your driveway. See how that works? Legal immigrants file applications. They provide documentation. They undergo background checks. They wait. They pay fees. They attend interviews. They comply with visa requirements. They prove relationships. They renew documents. They learn rules that are written by bureaucrats who apparently receive bonuses for every page nobody understands. They do all of this because they respect the country's legal process. Then they watch politicians suggest that enforcing the same process is hateful. That's an insult to legal immigrants. It tells them their effort was unnecessary. It tells them the wait was foolish. It tells them the money they spent meant nothing. It tells them the system values the person who bypassed the rules more than the person who followed them. That's not compassion. That's contempt for law-abiding behavior. The lazy argument works like this. You support deporting people who entered illegally. Therefore, you oppose immigrants. No. I oppose illegal entry. I oppose visa fraud. I oppose overstaying lawful permission and then pretending the original entry excuses the violation. I oppose employers exploiting illegal labor while publicly advertising their moral superiority. I oppose politicians refusing to enforce the law and then accusing citizens of hatred when the consequences appear. None of that requires hostility towards immigrants. It requires a belief that immigration should operate under law. A country without immigration law doesn't have an immigration policy. It has foot traffic. America has always received immigrants. Immigration has strengthened the country economically, culturally, intellectually, and militarily. Immigrants have built businesses. They've served in uniform. They've raised families. They've become citizens. They've contributed to science, medicine, agriculture, construction, transportation, education, manufacturing, technology, art, and every other part of national life. That history doesn't require open borders. In fact, a successful immigration system depends on public confidence. Citizens must believe the government knows who's entering. They must believe background checks mean something. They must believe criminal conduct has consequences. They must believe labor laws will be enforced. They must believe communities won't be overwhelmed without planning. They must believe elected officials care about the citizens already present. When government destroys that confidence, backlash follows. Then the same politicians who created the crisis condemn the public reaction. It's a reliable political method. Break the system, ignore public concern, call the public immoral, ask for another term. Legal immigration requires limits. Every country imposes limits. Even countries that speak warmly about migration maintain visa categories, residency rules, passport controls, employment requirements, and deportation procedures. The world hasn't abolished borders. It has simply trained Americans to feel guilty about theirs. Mexico has immigration law. Canada has immigration law. Brazil has immigration law. European countries have immigration law. Australia has immigration law. Japan has immigration law. Try arriving in another country without documents and announcing the borders are colonial constructs. You'll discover that abstract political theory doesn't impress the immigration officer. The officer may even point toward a chair. That chair won't be a sanctuary city. When I moved to Brazil, I entered legally. I didn't crawl through the jungle and declare myself a cultural contribution. I entered through Sao Paulo. I later obtained legal residency. I followed the process. Brazil had the right to ask who I was. Brazil had the right to require documents. Brazil had the right to decide whether I qualified for residency. Brazil had the right to expect me to obey Brazilian law. None of that offended me. I was entering another country. Their country. That fact created obligations on my part. I didn't believe my desire to live here canceled Brazil's sovereignty. And this is the point Americans avoid. Wanting something doesn't create a legal right to it. Wanting to live in America doesn't automatically create a right to enter America. Wanting employment doesn't create a right to bypass employment law. Wanting safety doesn't automatically satisfy asylum law. Wanting a better future doesn't create citizenship. Those desires may be understandable. They may deserve compassion. They may support a lawful application, but emotion doesn't replace jurisdiction. One of the worst habits in modern politics is treating legal categories as moral judgments. If someone doesn't qualify for asylum, activists say we've declared that person unworthy. No, we've declared that person didn't meet the legal definition. If someone is deported for illegal entry, activists say the country hates that person. No, the country enforced an entry rule. If a visa is denied, it doesn't mean the applicant is evil. It means the government declined the application. Law makes distinctions. That's what law does. Murder and self-defense both involve killing, but the legal distinction matters. Borrowing and theft both involve taking possession of property, but the legal distinction matters. Marriage and kidnapping both involve another person moving into your house. One usually involves cake. The legal distinction matters. Illegal immigration also damages legal immigrants in practical ways. It increases case backlogs. It consumes court resources. It creates competition in low-wage labor markets. It encourages employers to ignore wage and safety rules. It creates document fraud. It overwhelms local services. It makes every future reform politically harder. And it fuels suspicion toward immigrants who did everything correctly. The person who entered legally pays the social cost of a government that refuses to distinguish legal presence from illegal presence. That's unfair. It also creates a strange political hierarchy. A citizen who asks for enforcement is treated as morally suspect. A legal immigrant who supports enforcement is often ignored because that person disrupts the approved narrative. An illegal entrant is presented as the central moral authority in the discussion. And the employer who benefits from cheap labor quietly leaves through the back door. Everybody performs compassion. Nobody examines incentives. A workable immigration system needs several things. It needs controlled borders. It needs functioning entry points. It needs realistic legal immigration quotas. It needs fast decisions. It needs enough judges and administrative staff. It needs clear asylum rules. It needs enforcement against visa overstays. It needs serious penalties for document fraud and trafficking. It needs workplace verification. It needs consequences for employers who knowingly hire and exploit illegal workers. It needs coordination between federal, state, and local authorities. And it needs a political class willing to admit that neither chaos nor mass cruelty is acceptable. You can enforce the border without treating people like animals. You can show compassion without rewarding illegal conduct. You can protect refugees without pretending every economic migrant qualifies as a refugee. You can deport people humanely. You can prioritize violent offenders. You can create lawful temporary worker programs. You can demand that applications happen through legal channels. The choices aren't open borders or firing squads. But political activists love false choices because false choices allow them to avoid adult policy. The language also matters. People argue endlessly over the terms illegal immigrant, undocumented immigrant, unauthorized migrant, and illegal alien. Here's the useful distinction. A person isn't illegal as a human being. Conduct and status can be illegal. Entry can be illegal. Employment can be unauthorized. Documents can be fraudulent. Presence can violate immigration law. Use language that describes the legal issue without pretending the legal issue doesn't exist. Calling someone undocumented doesn't resolve the violation. It makes the violation sound like the person misplaced a library card. Calling everyone illegal reduces a human being to a legal status. Neither extreme helps. Be accurate. The person entered illegally. The person overstayed a visa. The person has a pending asylum claim. The person has temporary protected status. The person is a lawful permanent resident. The person is a naturalized citizen. Categories matter. Precision matters. Law without precision becomes politics. Politics without precision becomes propaganda. Supporting legal immigration while opposing illegal entry is consistent. It's fair. It protects citizens. It protects legal immigrants. It protects legitimate refugees. It protects workers from exploitation. It preserves public support for immigration. The people who erase the distinction aren't defending immigrants. They're defending chaos. And chaos always benefits somebody. Smugglers benefit. Dishonest employers benefit. Political machines benefit. Activist organizations benefit. Consultants benefit. The people crossing dangerous terrain, riding on top of trains, paying criminals, being assaulted, being trafficked, and dying along the route don't benefit. They carry the cost. So stop calling disorder compassionate. It isn't. A lawful system gives people a safe process. A lawless system gives them a dangerous gamble. Most martial arts books tell you what to teach. Be an effective karate instructor goes after the harder question, how to teach it well. Shawn Armstrong lays out a practical guide for instructors who want to build students, protect standards, run safer classes, and stop confusing rank with leadership. Because apparently, tying on a black belt doesn't magically install a teaching brain. A black belt means you put in time. It means you learned material. It doesn't mean students understand you, trust you, or improve under you. This book focuses on the instructor side, how you communicate, how you set standards, how you handle responsibility, and how you turn class time into real growth instead of organized sweating in pajamas. Effective instruction is more than showing a punch, counting to 10, and acting disappointed when students don't absorb wisdom through the walls. The book addresses relationship building, trust, respect, safety, ethics, and the ability to teach different kinds of learners. Those aren't soft extras. They're part of the job. Good instruction produces more than students who can copy motions. It builds understanding, discipline, confidence, and responsibility. Being an effective karate instructor pushes the instructor to think about what students are actually learning. If the class looks busy but nobody's getting better, that's not tradition, that's choreography with rent. Instruction is only part of running a school. This book also addresses the business side of the dojo and the changing landscape of martial arts education. That matters because an instructor has to teach well, protect the training environment, keep standards high, and still run a school that survives past next Tuesday. Basic reality. Humanity keeps making this complicated. Be an Effective Karate Instructor is written by Shawn Armstrong, an author, martial artist, and retired U.S. Army Infantry Staff Sergeant. The book reflects the idea that teaching is a responsibility. If students trust you with their time, their effort, and their development, you owe them more than rank, volume, and dramatic pauses. You owe them competence. Pick up Be an Effective Karate Instructor by Shawn Armstrong. It's available in Kindle and paperback formats. Scan the QR code or visit the Amazon link on screen. If you teach karate, plan to teach karate, or have ever watched a class and thought, someone should probably organize this before the students start aging in place, this book belongs on your shelf. The third issue is rights without responsibilities. This problem extends beyond immigration. It affects citizenship itself. Modern political culture teaches people to think of rights as personal possessions. My rights, my freedom, my benefits, my voice, my identity, my protection, my representation. But responsibility is described as an unfair burden imposed by society. You have the right to speak, but no responsibility to know what you're talking about. You have the right to vote, but no responsibility to understand the office on the ballot. You have the right to criticize the Constitution, but no responsibility to read it. You have the right to demand public services, but no responsibility to ask whether the government can pay for them. You have the right to enter the political debate, but no responsibility to tell the truth. That last one has produced an entire media industry. Rights are essential. The individual must be protected from arbitrary government power. Freedom of speech matters. Religious liberty matters. Due process matters. Equal protection matters. Property rights matter. The right to defend yourself matters. Voting rights matter. These rights don't depend on whether the government approves of you. But rights exist inside a system. That system survives only if citizens accept obligations toward each other. A courtroom can protect due process only if people respect court orders. An election can transfer power peacefully only if citizens accept lawful results and use legal mechanisms to challenge disputed results. Free speech can survive only if people tolerate disagreement. Property rights can survive only if theft remains punishable. A constitution can survive only if officials and citizens accept limits when those limits become inconvenient. Responsibility holds the structure together. Rights describe what the government may not do to you. Responsibility describes what you must do to keep the republic functioning. Assimilation is part of that responsibility. The word assimilation now causes panic. People hear it and imagine the government erasing cultures, banning foreign food, changing family names, and forcing everybody to watch baseball. That isn't what I mean. Assimilation doesn't require people to abandon their heritage. It doesn't require forgetting where they came from. It doesn't require rejecting family traditions. It means joining the country. It means learning the laws. It means practicing in civic life. It means understanding the political system. It means accepting that the Constitution outranks foreign political loyalties. It means developing enough skill in the common public language to work, vote, understand legal obligations, communicate with neighbors, and participate in national debate. It means becoming part of the country rather than create a permanent foreign enclave inside it. Immigrants should bring food, music, art, traditions, work ethic, religious belief, family practices, and personal history. That enriches the country. But they shouldn't import clan conflict, political violence, religious law, racial hatred, caste systems, blood feuds, or contempt for constitutional equality. The United States shouldn't become a storage facility for every conflict humanity failed to resolve somewhere else. You left that country? Leave the Civil War there. Leave the tribal hatred there. Leave the political intimidation there. Leave the honor killing there. Leave the religious persecution there. You're free to remember your history. You're not free to recreate its worst parts inside your new country. Loyalty also matters. Loyalty doesn't mean blind obedience to government. Government and country are not the same thing. You can oppose the president. You can criticize Congress. You can protest policy. You can challenge laws in court. You can publish books attacking the political establishment. I recommend that last one. Keeps the blood moving. Loyalty means accepting the constitutional nation as your political home. It means not placing a foreign government, foreign movement, foreign religious authority, or foreign ethnic conflict above the United States Constitution. It means that when your former country and your adopted country disagree, your political duty belongs to the country whose citizenship you accepted. Dual citizenship complicates that idea, but it doesn't erase it. A person can love two places. A person can have family in two countries. A person can maintain cultural ties. But citizenship still creates legal obligations, and those obligations must be taken seriously. Civic knowledge matters too. Naturalized citizens often know more about American government than people born in the United States. They had to study. They had to prepare. They had to answer questions. Native-born citizens can reach voting age without knowing the three branches of government. Some can't name their senators. Some believe the president controls gasoline prices with a dial behind the resolute desk. Some believe the Supreme Court passes laws. Some believe the First Amendment applies only to speech they support. Some think democracy means their preferred candidate wins. And if that candidate loses, democracy has been canceled. We have citizens who possess full political rights while displaying less civic knowledge than a person waiting for a citizenship interview. That should concern us. I'm not arguing for literacy tests at the ballot box. Those were abused historically to deny citizens their rights. I'm arguing for civic education, real civic education, not partisan indoctrination. Students should read the Declaration of Independence. They should read the Constitution. They should understand the Bill of Rights. They should know why the branches were separated. They should understand federalism. They should know how amendments work. They should understand the difference between rights, statutes, regulations, executive actions, and court decisions. They should learn the failures too. Slavery, segregation, the removal of native peoples, Japanese internment, discrimination, political corruption, war, government surveillance. They should also learn reform, abolition, the Reconstruction Amendments, civil rights laws, women's suffrage, expansion of voting rights, court challenges, public protest, political compromise, the correction of law through law. That's national history, not worship, not hatred, history. A country that teaches only national greatness produces arrogance. A country that teaches only national evil produces contempt. Citizens need both achievement and failure. They need context. They need proportion. They need to understand that historical people lived under conditions different from ours. They made moral decisions. Some were courageous. Some were monstrous. Most were complicated. The past isn't a costume drama populated by modern political activists wearing powdered wigs. Responsibility also includes economic contribution when a person is able to contribute. A nation can't function when every group believes citizenship means access to benefits funded by somebody else. Public assistance has a legitimate role. People become disabled. People lose jobs. Children need protection. Veterans carry injuries. Families face emergencies. Old people need support. A civilized country doesn't abandon people simply because they've fallen. But assistance should help restore stability when restoration is possible. It shouldn't become a permanent political identity. And immigration policy should consider whether newcomers can support themselves, work lawfully, and avoid becoming immediate burdens on overloaded systems. That statement is treated as cruel. It isn't. Resources are finite. Housing is finite. Medical capacity is finite. Classroom space is finite. Social workers are finite. Police officers are finite. Budgets are finite. Only political promises are infinite. When thousands of people arrive in a community, the community changes. Schools need more teachers. Hospitals need interpreters and staff. Housing demand rises. Wages may shift. Transportation systems absorb more users. Police and courts handle more cases. None of this means immigrants are bad. It means population has consequences. A serious government plans for those consequences. A dishonest government declares the situation a moral emergency and sends the bill to local taxpayers. Then, when those taxpayers complain, activists accuse them of lacking compassion. Compassion is easy when somebody else provides the apartment. Responsibilities apply to native-born citizens, too. This is crucial. You don't get a moral exemption because your grandparents were born in Ohio. Native-born Americans should obey the law. They should work when able. They should serve their communities. They should vote responsibly. They should understand the Constitution. They should respect fellow citizens. They should stop treating every election like a tribal war. They should stop measuring patriotism through clothing, slogans, and social media profiles. Wearing a flag shirt doesn't make you a patriot. Respecting the constitutional rights of someone you hate moves you closer. Patriotism is easy during the anthem. It becomes harder when your political opponent wins. That's when the test begins. Citizenship also carries a duty to defend the country. That doesn't mean every citizen must serve in the military. Military service is one form of national service. Public safety is another. Teaching is another. Emergency response is another. Community work is another. Jury duty is another. Raising responsible children is another. Running an honest business is another. Paying workers fairly is another. Reporting corruption is another. Citizenship should create a sense that the country's survival is partly your responsibility, because it is. The Republic isn't maintained by monuments. It isn't maintained by documents sitting behind glass. It's maintained by behavior. Every generation either practices constitutional citizenship or gradually abandons it. A country can't be inherited automatically. It must be maintained deliberately. The phrase rights without responsibilities describes the political disease of our time. People demand freedom from consequences. They demand inclusion without adaptation. They demand benefits without contribution. They demand political influence without civic knowledge. They demand equality while requesting special treatment. They demand tolerance while refusing to tolerate dissent. They demand citizenship while rejecting the idea that citizenship creates loyalty. That arrangement is unstable. Eventually, the responsible people realize they're carrying the irresponsible. Eventually, the lawful realize they're being mocked by the lawless. Eventually, the assimilated realize that government rewards separation. Eventually, public trust collapses. And once trust collapses, people stop believing equal rules exist. That's how our republic fragments. Not necessarily through one dramatic coup, through thousands of exceptions, thousands of unequal standards, thousands of excuses, thousands of officials saying the law can't be enforced because enforcement would be uncomfortable. Citizenship must involve rights, but rights require a nation capable of protecting them. That nation requires responsible citizens. So the relationship is simple. Rights protect the citizen, responsibilities preserve the country that protects the rights. Break either side, and the system fails. Living abroad changes how you see nations. It strips away some of the nonsense. When you spend your entire life in one country, you begin to treat its systems as natural. You assume every country works the same way. You assume your customs are universal. You assume your political arguments apply everywhere. Then you move, and reality introduces itself. I live in Brazil. I first entered through Sao Paulo. I later moved further south, and eventually I established legal residency. I didn't become Brazilian simply because I arrived. I didn't become entitled to residency because I liked the weather, the food, or the people. I had to follow a legal process. I had to possess the correct documentation. I had to comply with the rules. Brazil had the authority to define those rules. That's what sovereignty means. A sovereign country decides who may enter, who may remain, who may work, and who may become a citizen. This isn't controversial outside of certain American political circles. Most of the world understands it. When Americans discuss border enforcement, they often speak as if borders were an embarrassing American invention. They act as if the United States woke up one morning and decided to create passports out of racism. Travel abroad. You'll encounter borders. You'll present identification. You'll answer questions. You'll receive permission. You may receive a limited period of stay. You may even need a visa. You may need proof of onward travel. You may need financial documentation. You may need records translated. You may need appointments. You may need patience, a great deal of patience. Bureaucracy is one of humanity's most successful international institutions. Every culture has discovered a unique method of requiring the same document 3 times. When another country enforces immigration law, Americans usually accept it. They say, that's their law. That's their process. That's their country. But when the United States attempts the same thing, activists call it xenophobia. Why the double standard? Because many Americans no longer believe the United States has the moral right to exist as a normal country. They believe America carries a unique historical guilt. That guilt must be paid through permanent openness. Every border must remain negotiable. Every national interest must be treated with suspicion. Every enforcement action must be judged against the worst event in American history. No other country is expected to operate like this. Brazil protects Brazilian interests. Mexico protects Mexican interests. China protects Chinese interests. France protects French interests. Japan protects Japanese interests. The United States is told that protecting American interests is hateful. That argument is absurd. Living abroad also teaches you that adaptation is normal. When I moved to Brazil, I didn't expect every Brazilian to speak English for me. I had to learn how to communicate. I had to understand Brazilian customs. I had to learn what behavior was normal here and what behavior would mark me as an arrogant foreigner. I had to pay attention. That doesn't mean I stopped being American. It doesn't mean I abandoned my history. It means I respected the country I entered. Adaptation is respect. You don't move into someone else's home and immediately rearrange the furniture. At least not if you want to remain invited. Language is one of the most important parts of adaptation. I know how frustrating language learning can be. You feel intelligent in your own language and slightly defective in the new one. You know what you want to say, your mouth files an objection. You misuse a word, people stare. You repeat it louder because apparently volume repairs grammar. But you keep learning. Why? Because communication matters. Language connects you to neighbors, businesses, government offices, doctors, legal systems, news, and daily life. It allows you to participate. A country can't maintain civic unity without a common public language. That doesn't mean banning other languages. Speak whatever language you want at home. Teach your children your heritage language. Publish books in multiple languages. Celebrate bilingual ability. But citizens need a shared language for public life. Without it, communities separate. Information becomes uneven. Political messaging becomes targeted by language group. Misinformation spreads inside isolated networks. Civic debate fractures. A common language doesn't erase culture. It creates a common meeting place. Living abroad also teaches humility. You're the foreigner. Your habits aren't automatically correct. Your country isn't the center of every conversation. Local history matters. Local politics matter. Local grievances matter. You have to listen. Some Americans travel abroad and complain that the country isn't sufficiently American. They dislike the food. They dislike the service. They dislike the roads. They dislike the language. They dislike the schedule. They dislike that stores close differently. Then they return home and lecture everyone about cultural sensitivity. It's an impressive performance. A responsible immigrant or resident asks, what are the rules here? How do people communicate? What behavior is respectful? What does the country expect? How can I contribute? An irresponsible resident asks, why hasn't the country adapted to me yet? What attitude appears in every country? It's not limited to any nationality. Human beings carry entitlement very efficiently. No baggage fee required. Brazil also reminds me that national identity can survive complexity. Brazil is racially, culturally, geographically, and economically diverse. It has regional identities. It has immigrant communities. It has political divisions. It has serious historical problems. It also has a recognizable national culture. People can argue fiercely about the government while still understanding that Brazil is a country. That shouldn't be difficult for Americans. America can contain different regions, religions, ethnic groups, and cultural traditions while maintaining a common civic identity. But diversity doesn't automatically create unity. Unity must be built. It needs common law, common institutions, common language, common symbols, common expectations. A shared belief that despite disagreements, citizens belong to the same political community. Without that belief, diversity becomes separation. Living abroad also exposes American arrogance from both political directions. Some conservatives believe America has nothing to learn from other countries. That's foolish. Other countries solve certain problems better. They have different family structures, urban designs, transportation systems, public health practices, educational methods, and community traditions. You can learn without surrendering your identity. Some progressives believe every country is morally superior to America until that country enforces a law they dislike. Then suddenly local sovereignty becomes oppression. They praise foreign countries in theory. They become less enthusiastic when confronted with actual immigration rules, taxes, bureaucracy, policing, social expectations, or speech restrictions. Every country is complicated. Tourism is not citizenship. A vacation doesn't teach you how a society works. Living there does. Paying bills does. Handling documents does. Navigating institutions does. Learning the language does. Dealing with repairs does. Talking to neighbors does. Discovering that the government office is closed for a holiday you didn't know existed does. The biggest lesson is that nations are allowed to be nations. They're allowed to protect borders. They're allowed to preserve language. They're allowed to define citizenship. They're allowed to enforce laws. They're allowed to expect respect from newcomers. America should apply the same principle to itself. That doesn't mean rejecting immigrants. It means expecting immigrants to join the country. It doesn't mean treating foreigners as enemies. It means distinguishing guests, residents, lawful immigrants, illegal entrants, and citizens. It doesn't mean cultural purity. It means civic unity. You can welcome people without dissolving the country that welcomes them. My experience in Brazil strengthened my belief in legal immigration. It didn't weaken it. The process gave legitimacy to my residency. I can say I followed the rules. I respected the country's authority. That matters. Legal status creates stability. It allows a person to build a life without hiding. It protects the immigrant and the society. Illegal status creates vulnerability. It exposes people to exploitation. It makes them afraid to contact authorities. It allows employers and criminals to threaten them. The compassionate solution is a functioning legal system, not pretending the system doesn't matter. Americans should stop apologizing for expecting the same respect that other nations expect. Fill out the forms, follow the process, learn the law, make an effort with the language, respect the culture, contribute. Don't arrive demanding that the country prove its moral worth to you. And don't tell me immigration paperwork is fascism. I've completed immigration paperwork. It's tedious. It's repetitive. It may cause temporary spiritual damage, but it isn't fascism. Sometimes a form is merely a form. Before the final salute. A soldier's final mission isn't on the battlefield. It's at home. This is a story about duty, distance, family, and the hard words people wait too long to say. Robert Collins spent a lifetime answering the call, but when a terminal diagnosis arrives, the war he has to face isn't overseas. It's in the rooms he left behind, with the family that learned to live around his absence. He has 4 children, and each one carries a different version of the same injury. A hardened police officer, a blacksmith with forgiveness still burning in him, a musician who turned rebellion into melody, and a daughter who tried to hold the family together when everyone else started falling apart. Before time runs out, Robert has to do what no medal, no rank, and no old story can do for him. He has to face the people he loves. He has to hear what he missed, and he has to decide whether pride is worth carrying into the grave. Before the final salute is about family, legacy, and the kind of courage nobody pins to your chest. The courage to admit you were wrong. The courage to forgive. The courage to say, I understand, before the last chance disappears. This is for readers who want emotional fiction without the cheap tricks. Family, legacy, service. The quiet damage of silence. The harder work of making peace. At 92 pages, this book hits fast and stays with you. Some stories don't need 500 pages to leave a mark. Written by Shawn Armstrong, Before the Final Salute carries the weight of service, family, and age without turning any of it into greeting card mush. This is a story about people trying to make peace with the past before the past becomes permanent. Scan the QR code and get Before the Final Salute on Amazon, because the words you don't say can become the ghost you never outrun. Before the Final Salute by Shawn Armstrong, available now. Now let's define what American citizenship should actually mean. We've discussed the 14th Amendment. We've separated legal immigration from illegal entry. We've examined rights and responsibilities. We've talked about living abroad. Now we need to answer the central question. What should American citizenship mean? Not what document proves it, not which office records it. What should it mean? First, American citizenship should mean constitutional loyalty. That's the foundation. America isn't organized around a single ethnicity. It isn't organized around one bloodline. It isn't organized around a national church. It isn't organized around loyalty to a monarch. The United States is a constitutional republic. Its political identity rests on laws, rights, representation, federalism, separation of powers, and the consent of the governed. Citizenship means accepting that constitutional order. You don't have to agree with every interpretation. You don't have to support every administration. You don't have to approve of every law. But you must accept the Constitution as the supreme political framework and use lawful methods to change it. That means elections, legislation, litigation, amendments, peaceful protest, public persuasion. It doesn't mean political violence because you lost. It doesn't mean foreign intervention because you dislike domestic policy. It doesn't mean loyalty to party above country. Second, citizenship should mean equal protection under the law. No racial hierarchy, no religious hierarchy, no immigrant hierarchy, no political hierarchy, no special legal exemption because your group has a painful history. No reduced protection because your group is currently unpopular. Equal protection means the law protects the person, not the political category. That principle is constantly attacked by people who claim unequal treatment is necessary to create equality. It never stops there. Once government begins assigning rights, opportunities, punishments, and benefits according to group identity, citizenship fragments. People stop seeing fellow citizens. They see competitors. They see racial blocs. They see voting blocs. They see grievance categories. They see enemies receiving benefits they believe belong to them. Equal protection doesn't promise equal results. It promises equal legal status. That standard is imperfectly applied. Human beings administer it. Human beings are capable of bias, stupidity, corruption, laziness, and occasionally reading the wrong file for 20 minutes. But the principle must remain. Third, citizenship should mean lawful entry or lawful birth under a clearly defined rule. A country has the right to determine how citizenship is acquired. Birth, naturalization, parentage, adoption, military service under specified conditions, other lawful categories. Whatever the rules the country chooses must be clear. They must be applied consistently. They must protect children from statelessness. They must respect due process. They must avoid racial or religious discrimination. And they must not reward fraud. Naturalization should be respected because it's a deliberate act. A naturalized citizen studied, applied, waited, qualified, and took an oath. That person chose the country. That deserves recognition. Sometimes native-born Americans act as though citizenship acquired by birth makes them more American than someone who chose the nation as an adult. That attitude is ignorant. A naturalized citizen may understand the system better, may appreciate the country more, may serve it more faithfully. Citizenship by birth gives legal status. Character determines what you do with it. Fourth, citizenship should mean participation. Vote. Serve on juries. Attend local meetings. Know who represents you. Contact officials. Read proposed laws when possible. Support community institutions. Help during emergencies. Teach your children. Challenge corruption. Defend the rights of political opponents. Participation doesn't require living inside politics. In fact, people who live entirely inside politics become unbearable. They begin treating breakfast as a statement against oppression. But citizens should remain informed enough to exercise judgment. A republic can't survive when most citizens ignore government and a small activist class controls every institution. Silence creates vacancies. Organized factions fill them. Then the silent majority wake up and ask how everything became insane. It became insane while you were watching television. Fifth, citizenship should mean a common public language. English is the practical language of American civic life. That doesn't require hostility towards Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, Arabic, French, German, Korean, Vietnamese, or any other language. Multilingual ability is valuable. Families should preserve heritage languages. Businesses can serve customers in multiple languages. Government may need translation services to protect due process and public safety, but long-term national unity requires that citizens communicate with each other. A common language allows workers to protect their rights. It allows parents to understand schools. It allows citizens to follow directions or follow elections. It allows people from different backgrounds to become neighbors instead of permanent strangers. Language is not a measure of intelligence. Learning difficulty isn't moral failure, but refusing to learn while demanding full participation is unreasonable. Effort matters. Sixth, citizenship should mean historical knowledge. You should know the broad story of the country, the founding, the Constitution, slavery, the Civil War, industrial expansion, immigration, world wars, civil rights, the Cold War, the expansion of federal power, the struggles between liberty and security. You don't need a graduate degree. You don't need to memorize every president. Half of them probably wish we'd forget them. But you should understand how the nation developed. You should know the rights that were fought for. You should know the amendments exist because the original system was incomplete. You should know that progress didn't happen automatically. People organized, they argued, they fought, they voted, they marched, they sued, they served, they sacrificed. History creates gratitude and caution. It reminds us that institutions can improve. It also reminds us that they can collapse. Seventh, citizenship should mean economic responsibility. Work when able. Pay lawful taxes. Avoid fraud. Support your family. Honor contracts. Don't exploit employees. Don't steal from public programs. Don't build a political identity around receiving money from strangers. Again, society should help people in genuine need, but citizenship can't become a permanent claim against other citizens' labor. Government has no money of its own. Every program is funded through taxes, borrowing, inflation, or future obligations. Citizens should understand that. A benefit isn't free because no cashier is present. Somebody paid, or somebody's children will. Eighth, citizenship should mean respect for public order. That doesn't mean obedience to injustice. Civil disobedience has a place in American history, but civil disobedience traditionally involved openly violating a law, accepting arrest, and using that sacrifice to expose injustice. Modern activists often want the drama of resistance without the consequence. They block roads, occupy buildings, damage property, threaten officials, and then scream repression when police arrive. That isn't principled civil disobedience. That's political theater performed by people surprised that laws remain operational. Citizenship requires balancing protest rights with the rights of everyone else. You may protest. You may not assault. You may speak. You may not silence others through violence. You may assemble. You may not destroy the community. Rights coexist. Your freedom doesn't cancel mine. Ninth, citizenship should mean national loyalty without national worship. America isn't perfect. It has committed injustices. It's produced bad leaders. It's launched questionable wars. It's violated its own principles. It has also defeated tyranny, expanded rights, produced extraordinary prosperity, built institutions, advanced science, accepted millions of immigrants, and created constitutional protections that inspired people around the world. Both are true. Citizens should be capable of holding both truths without collapsing into propaganda. The person who believes America has never done wrong is dishonest. The person who believes America has never done good is equally dishonest. Patriotism is mature loyalty. It doesn't require blindness. It requires commitment. You correct the country because it's yours. You defend its principles because they matter. You don't spend your life describing the country as evil while demanding that it provide your safety, education, infrastructure, benefits, and free speech. That's not courage. That's a teenager insulting his parents while asking for the car keys. 10th, citizenship should mean responsibility to future generations. This may be the most important obligation. A citizen should leave the country stronger than he found it, or at least avoid setting the furniture on fire. That means responsible debt, functional institutions, defensible borders, a capable military, reliable infrastructure, educational standards, family stability, public trust, a legal system people respect. Citizenship is intergenerational. We inherited a constitutional structure built by people who knew they would die before seeing all its consequences. We're borrowing the country from people not yet born. Our decisions create their starting point. If we destroy the currency, they inherit debt. If we destroy civic trust, they inherit faction. If we destroy borders, they inherit disorder. If we destroy education, they inherit ignorance. If we destroy constitutional limits, they inherit power without restraint. The future doesn't get to vote on today's election. Citizens must represent it. So here's the definition. American citizenship is lawful membership in a constitutional republic, carrying equal rights, equal protection, political loyalty, civic participation, respect for law, shared language, historical understanding, economic responsibility, and obligation to future generations. That definition doesn't require ethnic purity. It doesn't require religious conformity. It doesn't require partisan loyalty. It doesn't require pretending America is perfect. It requires belonging. Real belonging. Not merely living inside the territory. Not merely receiving documents. Not merely qualifying for benefits. Belonging means the nation's future becomes partly your responsibility. America needs immigrants. It needs citizens too. Those aren't always the same thing. Immigration describes movement. Citizenship describes membership. Assimilation connects the two. A successful immigrant becomes part of the national life. A successful country welcomes that person while maintaining the structure that made the country desirable. That last part is often forgotten. People come to America because America offers opportunity, law, stability, education, security, markets, and freedom. If mass immigration destroys those conditions, immigration eventually loses its purpose. You can't invite the world into a functioning house while removing the foundation. The country also needs native-born Americans to act like citizens. Stop blaming immigrants for failures created by American leaders. Stop hiring illegal labor and then demanding tougher borders. Stop refusing to teach civics and then complaining that newcomers don't understand the country. Stop treating citizenship like inherited nobility. You didn't earn citizenship by selecting the correct birthplace. You inherited it. Use it responsibly. Naturalized citizens took an oath. Native-born citizens should live as though they did. Citizenship without a country is only legal status. A country without meaningful citizenship is only territory. America must preserve both. It must define who belongs. It must enforce lawful entry. It must protect equal rights. It must demand responsibility. It must teach its history. It must preserve a common civic culture, and it must stop apologizing for existing. A nation that asks nothing of its citizens will eventually receive nothing from them. That's the final point. Citizenship can't survive as a one-way transaction. The country protects your rights. You help preserve the country. The country gives you a political voice. You use that voice responsibly. The country provides legal protection. You obey the law. The country allows criticism. You criticize with enough honesty to separate reform from destruction. The country welcomes newcomers. Newcomers join the country. That's the agreement. Not perfect, not easy, but necessary. Consent of the governed takes a simple but essential question and treats it with a seriousness it deserves. What makes government legitimate, and why does that still matter today? Shawn Armstrong digs into the Federalist Papers and shows why consent is not some dusty slogan. It's the foundation of self-government. At the center of this book is a basic truth. Government is only legitimate when it rests on the consent of the governed. Armstrong walks the readers through that principle with clarity, using the Federalist Papers to show how the founders understood power, authority, and the limits that keep liberty alive. This is a full collection of essays, not a thin overview. Across 452 pages, Armstrong examines the Federalist Papers through the work of Hamilton, Madison, and Jay, dealing with political philosophy, rights, and the balance of power. The point is not to bury you in jargon. The point is to make the ideas usable. What gives this book teeth is that it doesn't stay in the 18th century. Armstrong connects the principles in the Federalist Papers to modern arguments about power, liberty, and the role of the citizen. If you want to understand today without pretending the past is irrelevant, this book gives you a solid footing. This is for readers who actually want substance: scholars, history buffs, political enthusiasts, and regular citizens who are tired of shallow civics and cheap talking points. If you want to think more clearly about government and your place in it, this book gives you real material to work with. Consent of the Governed is written by Shawn Armstrong, whose background brings a grounded voice to a serious subject. He writes with clarity, keeps the argument moving, and never loses sight of the fact that these ideas matter because people still live under governments that either respect consent or abuse power. If you want a stronger grasp of the principle that makes Republican government legitimate, get the book. Scan the QR code and pick up Consent of the Governed on Amazon. Consent of the Governed by Shawn Armstrong. Serious history, clear argument, and relevance that reaches straight into the present day. We've covered a lot today. Birthright citizenship, the 14th Amendment, the difference between interpretation and amendment, legal immigration, illegal entry, assimilation, language, loyalty, civic knowledge, rights, responsibilities, and the experience of living legally in another country. The central issue is simple. America must decide whether citizenship still means membership in a nation or whether it means access to territory and benefits. The 14th Amendment should be respected as written until it's lawfully changed. If Americans want to alter birthright citizenship, they should do the hard work of amendment. Write the language, debate the consequences, protect children, prevent statelessness, define lawful ties, build public consensus, ratify the change. That's constitutional government. Anything else invites political manipulation. Legal immigration should be welcomed. Illegal entry should be discouraged and enforced against. Those positions are compatible. A country can be generous and lawful. It can protect refugees and control borders. It can respect immigrants and punish traffickers. It can create legal pathways and deport people who ignore them. The lazy accusation that all enforcement is hatred should be rejected. It insults citizens, it insults legal immigrants, and it protects a broken system. Rights must remain central, but responsibilities must return to the conversation. Citizens should know the country's laws. They should understand its institutions. They should participate. They should work when able. They should respect equal protection. They should communicate through a common public language. They should place the Constitution above political tribe. They should leave the nation better for the next generation. Living abroad teaches that none of this is unusual. Other nations enforce borders. Other nations require documentation. Other nations expect cultural adjustment. Other nations defend their sovereignty. America doesn't become evil by behaving like a country. It becomes irresponsible when it refuses to. We need to stop confusing kindness with surrender. Kindness about law produces exploitation. Law without kindness produces cruelty. A serious country maintains both order and humanity. That balance is difficult. It requires judgment. It requires officials who understand the difference between enforcement and abuse. It requires citizens who understand the difference between compassion and manipulation. And it requires immigrants who understand that joining a nation creates responsibilities toward that nation. America's future doesn't depend on stopping immigration. It depends on making immigration serve the country and the immigrant. That means legal entry, fast and fair processing, clear rules, secure borders, consistent enforcement, integration, language, work, citizenship, participation. It means replacing chaos with a functioning system. A functioning system would be less dramatic. That's probably why politicians avoid it. Nothing frightens a political consultant more than a problem getting solved. Citizenship should be open to people from every race, every background, and every corner of the world who meets the lawful standard and accept the constitutional nation. That's one of America's strengths. A person doesn't need the correct bloodline. A person needs the correct commitment. But commitment must exist. Without commitment, citizenship becomes paperwork. Without citizenship, the country becomes a marketplace surrounded by roads. Without a country, rights eventually become promises nobody has the power or loyalty to defend. You don't preserve a nation by refusing to define it. You preserve it by deciding what it stands for, who belongs, how they join, what rights they receive, what responsibilities they accept, what principles apply equally to everyone, and what future they're expected to protect. That's citizenship. Not a slogan, not a benefit, not a demographic category, not a political strategy. Citizenship is membership in a national community bound by constitutional law. And if America wants to remain a country, it must start treating citizenship like it matters. This has been Shawn thinking out loud. Citizenship without a country. I'm Shawn Armstrong. Think for yourself, read the Constitution, learn the history, respect the law, and stop letting people who can't define citizenship decide that borders are immoral.